philosophy. Is it okay to study philosophy or is it haram? If you're going into college and you need to take a philosophy 101 course, is it haram for you to take this course? If you look online, you'll find some people saying that it's haram. You'll find some people using philosophy in da'wah. You'll find a range of opinions among the population today. But what do the Muslim scholars say about the ruling of studying philosophy? Now, before we can talk about philosophy, we have to understand what exactly does the word even mean. Well, philosophy comes from a Greek word meaning love of wisdom. And when it comes to the actual definition of philosophy, one of the best definitions is a definition that Dr. Russ Payne mentions, which is that philosophy is all of rational inquiry except for science. Now, that means that anytime you use your mind to come up with something, then therefore you are philosophizing. You are using philosophy by definition. Now, based on this definition, no one disputes that this is something that is, generally speaking, good. And it's just a natural part of the mind. Every single religion, every single human being naturally uses this. For example, mathematics is part of philosophy, right? You're using the mind, you're counting things. Logic, these are not things that are right or wrong. These are natural ways that the mind works. But there's a second meaning of philosophy, which is the organized systems of philosophy. So when you study philosophy in Western universities, or even in some Eastern universities, you are studying a particular kind of philosophy, analytic philosophy, which is heavily influenced by Greek philosophy. When you study the philosophy of the philosophers in the Islamic tradition, like Al-Farabi, like Ibn Sina, like Ibn Rushd and others, you are going to be studying a specific kind of philosophy that is heavily inspired by the Greeks. So the ruling of this second kind of philosophy here is very different than the ruling of the first. Now, concerning the first, we have a statement of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, which Al-Bayhaqi rahimahullah mentions. It's a very interesting quote where Ahmad ibn Hanbal describes Ash-Shafi'i as a philosopher. Ahmad rahimahullah, he says, Ash-Shafi'iyu faylusufun fi arba'ati ashya. Ahmad rahimahullah, he said that Ash-Shafi'i is a philosopher in four things. في اللغة واختلاف الناس. He is a philosopher in language, the differences of opinion of people, والمعاني والفقه. And in the linguistic meanings as well as in Islamic jurisprudence. Now, Ahmad rahimahullah, when he's describing Ash-Shafi'i as a philosopher, is he using anything negative? No, this is a statement of praise. He's using the word just as a term that was used that describes someone who's very wise, someone who's very knowledgeable. You also have Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, who mentions that philosophy is not something that we can just discard, nor is it something that we can totally accept. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah in Minhaj al-Sunnah, he says, أما نفي الفلسفة مطلقا أو إثباتها فلا يمكن. He says, as for rejecting philosophy altogether or accepting it altogether, then this is something that is impossible. إذ ليس للفلاسفة مذهب معين ينصرونه. He says, because the philosophers, all of them, don't just have one methodology that they all support. ولا قول يتفقون عليه. Nor do they have one position that they all agree on. في الإلهيات, concerning theological matters, metaphysics. والمعاد, and life after death. والنبوات, and prophecies and prophethood. وَلَا فِي الطَّبِيعِيَّات, nor do they have a position that they all agree on when it comes to the natural sciences. وَالرِّيَاضِيَّات, nor do they have anything that they agree upon when it comes to even mathematics. There are certain mathematical concepts that you might find debate in. So when it comes to dealing with philosophy, we have to understand that there are two connotations once again. Number one is a general idea of using the mind. This is something that is not a problem. Okay, this is something that naturally every human being does. But the second connotation of philosophy are the specific built-up schools and methodologies of philosophy. Now, as we mentioned, when you're going to be studying philosophy in Western universities, you are going to be studying analytic philosophy, which is heavily influenced by Greek philosophy. So you're going to be learning about Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, all of these different philosophers. Even in the Islamic tradition, like the people that I've mentioned, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, and others, they are heavily inspired by Greek philosophy. In fact, Al-Farabi, in his book Al-Huruf, he says about the philosophy of his time, he says, Al-falsafatu al-mawjudatu al-yawma 'inda al-Arab, he says that the philosophy that is found today among the Arabs, he said, manqulatun ilayhim min al-Yunan. He says this has been transmitted to them from the Greeks. Now, how exactly did this happen? Well, we find that actually certain groups, certain sects that evolved, like the Jahmiyyah, like the Mu'tazila, they were heavily inspired by Greek philosophy. Now, how did this get its way into the Muslim Arab world? Well, during the Abbasid Khilafah, as well as before this, we have a lot of translation that occurred when it comes to Greek philosophical works. You have institutions like Baytul Hikmah in the Abbasid Khilafah where they would translate these works, and that's how they found their way into the Islamic tradition. We have also Al-Jahm ibn Safwan. We have other figures that really brought these ideas and popularized them in the Muslim world. And this is what really gave birth to these ideas of the Jahmiyyah, of the Mu'tazila, concerning their creedal positions on the attributes of God and free will and all of these different things. Now, Ibn Salah rahimahullah, he says, Al-falsafatu ra'su safa. He says that philosophy is the head of all foolishness, wal-inhilal, and all dissolution. In other words, you're going to lose yourself. You're going to become weak if you study this. وَمَادَّةُ الْحِيرَةِ وَالضَّلَالِ. And this is the substance of confusion and misguidance. We also have Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, who states that al-mantiq al-yunani la yahtaju ilayhi al-dhaki wa la yantafi'u bihi al-balid. He says that Greek logic, Greek philosophy, this is something that the intelligent person does not need, and the unintelligent person, the person who is a simpleton, he's not very smart, he's not going to benefit from. So this is why we find many scholars forbidding mantiq, Greek logic, and also just philosophy in general, stating that it is haram. As-Suyuti rahimahullah, he has a very famous fatwa in which he states that it is completely haram. He says, فَنُّ الْمَنْطِقِ فَنٌّ خَبِيثٌ مَذْمُومٌ. He says the subject matter of Greek philosophy is something that is disgusting. It is madhmoom. It is something blameworthy. يَحْرُمُ الْإِشْتِغَالُ بِهِ. It is haram to busy oneself with it. And then he lists out several scholars who have stated that this is haram. The first of them being Ash-Shafi'i. He mentions also Ibn Salah, An-Nawawi, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. He also mentioned that how Ibn Taymiyyah has a work in which he refutes the Greek logicians, which he himself summarized. So, generally speaking, the general trend of ulama of our tradition is that they state that this is haram, and they only allowed to delve into it at a very limited level. In fact, As-Suyuti rahimahullah, he mentions that the view that it is haram was actually the view of Al-Ghazali rahimahullah later on in his life before he died. Now, Al-Ghazali rahimahullah is very interesting, and we keep mentioning him. Why? Because he got so deep into it. He even wrote a book in which he critiques the philosophers called Tahafutul Falasifa. Now, in this work, he really critiques a lot of their positions, but he does not provide an alternative. He does not provide an alternative model of epistemology, of ontology, of language. He kind of leaves it open-ended. And for this reason, you find Ibn Rushd, who came after him, who refutes him. And he writes a book rebutting his arguments called Tahafut Tahafut, the incoherence of the incoherence. Right? This is a reference to Al-Ghazali's work in which it's titled The Incoherence of the Philosophers. Now, I would say the first scholar from the Ahlul Hadith side, from the Ahlul Athar side, the scholars that tried to remain true to the creed of the early Muslims, the first of them to really delve into philosophy in a full and deep sense, and to provide a reformed model in which we can understand the creedal positions of the early Muslims in light of, was Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. In his works like Ar-Raddu ala al-Mantiqiyin, which is a refutation of the Greek logicians, and Dar'u Ta'arud al-Aql wal-Naql, he wrote a book in which he tries to show that there's no clash between the aql, the intellect, and the naql, and the text. And he shows that actually there's nothing that is logical that clashes with what we have in the Islamic texts. Either something is actually illogical and we think that it's logical, or we have an incorrect understanding of the Islamic text, that there's actually no clash between them. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he's actually had a very great reception recently in Western academia. For example, we have Wa'il Halaq in his book Ibn Taymiyyah Against the Greek Logicians. He states about Ibn Taymiyyah's work that it is one of the most devastating attacks ever leveled against the logic upheld by the early Greeks, the later commentators, and their Muslim followers. Frank Griffel, he states that Ibn Taymiyyah was probably one of the best informed critics of rationalism in Islam, and his opinion deserves to be taken seriously. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he critiques the models that have been used for hundreds of years and provides more coherent models that are more in line with the Islamic teachings. So in summary, we can say that generally speaking, it is haram for someone to delve into this kind of stuff, to delve into analytic philosophy and philosophy that is really heavily based on the works of the Greeks, except with certain conditions. If you have to take a philosophy class, then there are certain conditions that you have to make sure that you fulfill before enrolling in these programs. Number one is you have to have a sound understanding of Islamic creed. Have a good understanding. Study works on Islamic creed. Understand what the early Muslims believed in. With their evidences, with their logical evidences, as well as their evidences from the Qur'an and Sunnah as well. Number two is that while you're in this program, and even after you finish these programs, make sure that you have a contact, like an actual person, an expert on Islamic theology that can answer your questions. There are a lot of resources out there, lots of videos, lots of programs, lots of courses, lots of books. You can actually read a lot of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah that has been translated in English. But the reason why I'm recommending to have an actual person, it could be your local scholar who is very proficient in these matters, is because what would take you hours, days, weeks, months, or years to come up with an answer for, an expert can give it to you in just a matter of minutes. So this is the second condition here. Number three is to have a very close connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His worship. Sometimes you can be intellectually convinced of Islam, and that might be demolished when you start to ask certain questions. You might have certain doubts. And really at the end of the day, it's our close connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam is not just an intellectual discourse, but it's a spiritual connection that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through worship. So make sure that you have a regular habit of dhikr, of prayer. And last but not least, be in the company of the righteous. Have good company. Be in the company of people that are grounded, people that are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people that you want to be like, people that inspire you. I would say with these conditions, then it's permissible to delve into these things. And for those who are scholars, those who are talabatul ilm, those who are mutakhassisun, specialists in the field of aqeedah, of course, these people have to delve into philosophy to a certain extent to be able to defend the Islamic positions against philosophical arguments that are leveled against the Islamic positions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us all strong in faith. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from doubts. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us close to Him. Ameen.